In the first two parts of our series, we concentrated on basic automobile theft, ways for the patrol officer to detect a stolen vehicle, and once he suspects he has encountered a stolen car, ways to identify it as such. Those are important issues because statistics show that auto theft is on the rise again. After a 10-year decline, the number of cars stolen in the United States went up 1.2% in the year 2000 to almost 1,200,000 vehicles. That amounts to hundreds of millions of dollars, and it is really only the tip of the criminal iceberg. It is probably safe to say that most auto thieves don't limit their criminal activity to just stealing cars. Drug dealers steal cars, burglars steal cars, bank robbers steal cars, rapists steal cars, even serial killers steal cars. And the diligent patrol officer can find himself on the ground floor of those types of investigations if he or she takes that one extra step. But the problem of motor vehicle theft isn't restricted to just the hot Corvette or the family Cadillac. Where car theft accounts for losses in the hundreds of millions of dollars every year, heavy equipment theft runs into the billions, and motorcycles are stolen on a regular basis for both fun and profit. We'll look at both of these crimes and show you how the patrol officer can identify these stolen machines. The theft of construction and farm equipment in the United States is a multi-billion-dollar-a-year business. When you factor in the rate and number of thefts worldwide, you have dollar amounts that exceed the total national budget of several small countries. According to FBI statistics, only 10% of the heavy equipment reported stolen is ever recovered, and it is estimated that as much as 30% of all construction equipment actually stolen may go unreported because of an owner's willingness to write the theft off and keep his insurance premiums down. Where the stolen equipment ends up is an area for debate. It is believed that in the states of Arizona, California, New Mexico, and Texas, stolen equipment is spirited right across the border. However, the majority of stolen construction and farm equipment probably does not travel more than 100 miles from the point where it was stolen.
The biggest problem is the fact that it needs to be recovered, of course, and finding people who are willing to actually get out there and recover it.
Doug Mcallister is a 26-year veteran of the Michigan State Police who retired as a detective sergeant in the year 2000. He is currently contracted to the MSP as an auto theft investigator and training coordinator of the Auto Theft Prevention Authority. Mcallister says more heavy equipment could be recovered if more patrol officers were willing to take that one extra step.
It's intimidating. You come across a piece of construction equipment that's much larger than your patrol unit, and you're looking at it, say, setting on a trailer or at a construction site or beside the road somewhere. And the first question you're going to ask yourself is, where do I even look for an identification number? And if I find it, what am I looking at? How do I know it's even good? Because this stuff is something that you don't run into every day. And for that reason, we find that a lot of patrol officers just shy away from it. They may make a traffic stop on a dump truck pulling a lowboy trailer with a backhoe on it. They'll check the dump truck, they'll check the trailer, but they won't get up on the trailer to check that backhoe. And that may be the only piece of stolen equipment that they're looking at.
Complicating the identification of stolen farm or construction equipment is the fact that they are not titled or registered, as a car is required to be.
The biggest problem for law enforcement is that heavy equipment is not titled or registered. So it's much harder to trace. It is not required that it has a registration plate, and therefore when you see it rolling down the road on a trailer or being driven down the road, you don't look for a registration plate. You don't expect to see one. And finding or tracing an owner because of the no title, no registration makes it that much more difficult. A lot of times the only way you're going to find an owner is back through the manufacturer, who may maintain records if it's a relatively new piece of equipment. If it's an older piece of equipment, it could have been sold a half a dozen times, and the owner or the manufacturer has no idea who the current owner is. So it's very difficult to trace it back to the legitimate owner. You may find it. You've got a product number on it, and on construction equipment or farm equipment, the VIN is known as the PIN, product identification number. It's treated the same way, but it just is called something different. It's run in the system the same way, NCIC system, and if you get a stolen hitch, you're going to get it the same way on a PIN as you would a VIN. But keeping in mind, you're never going to get a registration information back on it as far as the owner, because it's just not there.
That is not to say there are not identification numbers of any kind on a piece of heavy equipment. You just need to know where to look, what to look for, and be willing to look.
We're out here this morning at a Michigan Cat equipment dealership in Holt, Michigan. What we're going to be talking about is what you're going to see on a traffic stop, what you can look at on a traffic stop on this construction equipment. This stuff is out there on the street for you. You're going to come across it all the time. And there are certain points on this equipment that it's going to help you identify it, determine whether or not it's stolen. This particular piece is a Caterpillar skid steer loader. It's not a Bobcat, as most people refer to them. It's a skid steer loader is the real name of this equipment. Bobcat happens to be a brand name. It's been on the market for a long time, so a lot of people refer to these skid steers by that name as Bobcat. That can get you into trouble sometimes too when you're trying to file a theft report. But what we're looking at on this equipment, the first thing to look at in any construction equipment, anytime you get up there, is the product tag, product identification number tag. And this particular tag, mounted high on the left rear above the engine compartment, contains a full product identification number or serial number, and it also contains the model number. If you become interested in this kind of equipment or identification, you want to make mental note of the types of tags, how they're made, what they look like, how they're attached, because that can be a good point of identification as to whether or not this is altered equipment. Someone's tried to disguise the true identity of this equipment by changing the tag or altering a tag. You've looked at that tag, you've determined an identity from it. What Caterpillar equipment also does, they will hard stamp a number into the base machinery somewhere near the product identification number tag. In this particular case, we have the tag here, and directly below it we have in hard stamp the same serial number. So if someone removes that tag, and it can accidentally be removed at times, this hard stamp should be somewhere in that general area. If you don't find that number after this tag has been removed, then there's a good possibility that someone has ground it out, filled it back in with body filler, and painted that area over. If you've looked at that, you're not satisfied with what you see, for some reason you think someone's tried to do an alteration or a counterfeiting on that tag, there's other locations on this piece of equipment that you can find alternate points of identification. Engine numbers, transmission numbers, and component numbers. If we open this engine compartment, we're going to find that there are alternate numbers for us to use. We have a fuel injector, and on that fuel injector we have a serial number. And the serial number is cross-referenceable back to the full product number. You would have to get a hold of Caterpillar equipment, and they give them the serial number off the fuel injector pump. They will cross-reference that for you and tell you which particular machine that fuel injector pump was put on by product number. You also have the engine here, and there's an engine number available to you. Now sometimes this stuff is hard to get to, and almost always is going to get you dirty. In this particular case, we have an engine number on a tag that is back inside, and you can get to it, and you can clean it off, and you can see the number back on the rear. Another point of identification on rental equipment, and quite often you're going to find it as a tag or a number put in, stenciled in, is a tag identifying the rental company, and that tag also contains a serial number. In this particular piece of equipment, Caterpillar puts it directly opposite, high on the right side of the rear frame, with their tag indicating Cat Rental, and it does contain a portion of the serial number. Remember that all construction and farm equipment are going to have some kind of an identification number tag on them. If you are looking at one of these pieces of equipment and you find that tag and something on that tag doesn't look right, whether it's an alteration, an attempted alteration, or whether the tag is gone completely and there's nothing left there but rivet holes or pegs from rivets, you're going to want to move on further. You're going to want to find some other point of identification on that particular piece of equipment. Whether you go to the engine number, whether you go to the fuel injector number, transmission number, or whether you get in touch with the company, manufacturer representatives, and you find a location on that equipment where you're looking at a concealed number. These pieces of equipment are much the same as cars and trucks. They're going to have a hidden number, a secondary number someplace. That location is made available to you on a need-to-know basis by the manufacturer. Usually it can be done by a phone call. Sometimes they will even send a representative out from one of their regional locations and find that number for you. Other points can assist you in identifying this type of equipment. Michigan Cat, as an example, uses a GPS system on all of their rental equipment. That way they can detect when a piece of equipment is in need of service, and they'll send an on-site service truck out direct to the location where that equipment is and provide the service right there. It's also kind of handy if that piece of equipment is stolen, because they can bring that equipment up on their computer. GPS will tell them exactly where it's located. Next piece of equipment we're going to talk about is a Model 416C Caterpillar backhoe loader. This particular model, we're looking at something that Michigan Cat equipment does that's kind of unique to Michigan Cat as far as rental equipment is concerned. They put the serial number, or at least a partial serial number, as their inventory number. And they put it in decals high enough on the equipment so that one of their service people can locate this piece of equipment out at a construction site. But the nice thing about that is that a patrol officer rolling down the road, seeing this on a trailer, can run that number while they're still mobile. And if it's a stolen piece of equipment, it could very well come back as a stolen hit, as an NCIC entry. When we're looking at this number, the serial number, we also go down the right-hand side of this particular model and we find two tags. The first tag is the product identification number tag, containing the full PIN and again the model number. Right adjacent to that is the component tag, again containing the full PIN, but it also contains the engine, transmission numbers. Again, on this piece of equipment, as with the skid steer that we looked at, we're looking at a stamped in hard stamp repeat of the PIN in the vicinity of the PIN tag, in this case directly below. Notice on this 416C that the engine is completely enclosed. That's not uncommon to construction equipment. A lot of times the engine number and the components on that engine are not going to be available to a patrol officer. It's going to require some bolts to be taken off, for these shields to be taken off to allow you to get full access to the engine. Backhoe loaders, bulldozers, several other pieces of equipment might be this way. If you did have access in there, you'd have access to the fuel injector pump, you'd have access to the turbo unit. All of those have cross-referenceable numbers back to a full VIN. Another number that is available to you on a front end, on a backhoe and front loaders would be the front axle number. And in this particular case, it's on a tag. Some pieces of equipment, you're going to find that hard stamped into the axle. Another major component on almost all pieces of construction equipment is the ROPS. This thing right here, rollover protective structure. It's going to be present on all pieces of construction and major farm equipment. All of those ROPS structures are going to have a serial number. It's either going to be in the form of a hard stamp someplace on the ROPS, or it's going to be in the form of a riveted tag. In this particular case, we're looking at a Caterpillar dozer, and the ROPS is up at the top on a tag. Now, these things are serialized for a purpose, and that purpose is a liability reason. If this thing is rolled over, resulting in injury, the manufacturer is going to want to know that the ROPS that's on this unit was the original ROPS that was put on it by the manufacturer at the factory, and that no one has done anything to tamper. The good thing about that is this number is cross-referenceable to a full product number. We've been talking about Caterpillar equipment here today because the folks here at Michigan Cat have been kind enough to let us use their facility. But keep in mind, everything that we've talked about today is going to apply pretty much across the board. Whether you're looking at Cat, whether you're looking at Case, John Deere, Komatsu, they're all going to be numbered. They're all going to have numbers that are available to you in a open location to view, either on a trailer or when the equipment is on the ground. But the object of that, the importance of that, is for you to actually get out there and look at those numbers. Find that number, clean it off, run it, see whether it's stolen. Remember, the last opportunity that anyone may have of recovering that piece of construction equipment is as it rolls down the road. Once it's gone from your site, it may be gone forever.
There are some things that you can tell about heavy equipment without having to be up close. As a general rule, construction equipment is yellow and farm equipment is green or red. As with any general rule, there are exceptions, but by and large, yellow is construction and green or red is agriculture. And within that rule, it is important to note that not all yellows are the same.
Well, most construction equipment is yellow, but not all yellow is the same. John Deere yellow is different than Case yellow, is different than Komatsu yellow, is different than other manufacturers. If you can get to the point where you can recognize that what I'm looking at is John Deere yellow, but I'm not looking at a John Deere. This thing is labeled as a Case. You know, what is that? Or you're looking out across a 40-acre field and you see next to the wood line the back boom of a backhoe sticking up in the air. You can't see anything else. And you recognize the fact that this is John Deere yellow. And I happen to know from a recent briefing that there was a John Deere backhoe stolen the next county over. That might give you what you need to get back there to see, is this the backhoe that I'm looking for? So just notice that there's a difference in the shades of yellow on this stuff, and they pretty much all stay the same year to year to year. And you'll be able to pick out from a distance whether it's Cat or John Deere or Case or what it is, just by the shade of yellow you're looking at.
Sometimes what is not there can provide you a clue that the piece of equipment might be stolen. Decals removed from the equipment will often leave an outline and should raise questions with you.
The company name, you certainly, if I have a stolen backhoe, I want to take that name off there. I don't want somebody to recognize that as Davis Construction. I want that gone. The fact that it is gone should give the patrol officer reason to think, you know, why did that come off? Maybe it's a legitimate sale and the new owner didn't want the old owner's name on it. Or maybe it's a stolen piece of equipment and you need to take that extra step. You need to find the number and run the number for stolen.
Heavy equipment is not stolen on the spur of the moment for a joyride like a car might be. Construction equipment thieves have many common traits. The chances are good that he is currently working in the construction business has worked in the business in the past or is well acquainted with someone in the business. Unless he is stealing for his own use, he is probably stealing on order. The construction equipment thief seldom works alone. The thief often uses rental trucks or trailers to steal and transport the stolen equipment. The thief will often use the cover of daylight to commit his crime. It is not unusual for a thief or theft crew to target a construction site or dealership during regular business hours. If confronted, the thief will claim he is moving the equipment from one job site to another at the request of the owner. He may contend he was just hired to move the unit and doesn't even know the owner. He'll say he was dispatched to the site and told what to pick up and where to take it. He may not be overly concerned about being stopped because he is aware that patrol officers rarely look for identifying numbers on heavy equipment. He is aware that heavy equipment does not have registration numbers that can be tracked by computer. Equipment thieves will often have a targeted piece of equipment under surveillance to identify the best possible time to pick it up. A piece of equipment is often driven from a construction site to a place where it can safely be loaded onto a waiting truck or trailer. The thief is aware that patrol officers seldom stop a piece of construction equipment on the highway. Equipment thieves come ready to steal. They will probably have the appropriate key with them for the unit that they have targeted. Experienced equipment thieves try not to target older pieces of equipment. They are aware that if they are caught, they will not be sentenced any more harshly for stealing newer, higher value equipment that will net them much more at the time of sale.
If you get the opportunity to take a look at this stuff on a trailer, by all means take a look at it. Equipment that is being transported is a golden opportunity for an officer. It may be the only opportunity for an officer. This equipment gets stolen, it gets transported, and then it gets used. And once it is beyond the transport stage, it may not ever go back into a transport stage where you're going to have that opportunity to get another look at it.
We're here at Grove Motorsport in Mason, Michigan, and I'm surrounded by Hondas, Kawasaki, Suzuki's, dirt bikes, track bikes, go-fast street bikes, cruisers, to point out a couple of facts about these motorcycles. First thing to remember, when you're out on the street and you're confronting a motorcycle, you're looking at certain points of identification. Remember that you have a VIN. You have a VIN that's pretty well standard across the board as to where it's going to be located on these machines. You have a federal conformance label that's going to contain a VIN and it's going to contain a date of manufacture. You have an engine number. For the most part, that engine number is going to have to be cross-referenced back to a VIN, but it's going to tell you an identification point on that motorcycle. A lot of these motorcycles also have EPA labels on them that are going to narrow this bike down to the year of manufacture. That part, these things are standard. You're going to find them located pretty much in the same locations on all bikes, with maybe the exception of the engine number. Keep in mind, motorcycles are a hot theft item. Those things are on the street. They're easier to steal than a four-wheel vehicle. If you can't start them and drive them away, a couple of people can load them on a trailer in the back of a truck, and they could be down the road in a hurry. On a Honda such as this American Classic Edition Shadow, you're going to have a VIN, which is visible on the right side of the headstock. Directly to the left of that and directly to the front or facing front on the machine is a conformance label containing the VIN, containing the month and year of manufacture. Also present on this motorcycle is going to be an engine number, which is located on the right side at the base of the rear cylinder. On a Kawasaki dirt bike like this KLX 300R, you're not going to find all of the labels or identifiers that you're finding on a standard street bike. You're not going to find a conformance label. You're not going to find the EPA label. You are going to find the VIN on the headstock right side, and you are going to find an engine number. In this particular case, it's on the top of the engine to the rear of the cylinder. On the Suzuki, such as this SV650 street bike, you're going to find a VIN on the right side of the headstock. To the rear of that, also on the frame, you're going to find a conformance label that contains the month and year of manufacture, and it also contains a full VIN. On the opposite side or the left side of this bike, low on the engine, you're going to find an engine number on a pad that's been prepared for that number. Also on the left side, you're going to find an EPA label that contains the model year of that motorcycle. Now we're talking about Harley Davidsons. This is almost an entirely different classification of motorcycle as far as the thieves are concerned. This is the type of motorcycle and the one that everyone wants. This is the one that you're going to see the commercial motorcycle thief at the top of their list. This is the type of bike that you have associated with commercial theft, with motorcycle gangs, because they all want to ride the Harleys. Harley Davidsons are identifiable. They're worth the effort. When you're out there on the street, you make the stop. They have the same type of numbers on them that the import bikes have, and they're pretty much in the same locations. You're looking at a VIN on the right side of the headstock, much the same as almost all other motorcycles. You're looking at a conformance label on one of the down tubes on the right-hand side, in most cases on a Harley Davidson. That's going to contain the full VIN. It's going to contain a month and year of manufacture. Opposite side of the motorcycle, at the bottom of the cylinders, where the cylinders come together, you're going to find an engine number. And in a Harley Davidson, you're looking at an engine number that is a derivative of the VIN. So the VIN on the engine and the VIN on the frame should at least look the same with at least the last 6 of that number. I think that the one thing that everyone out there on patrol wants to be able to do from the day they first put the uniform on, hopefully until the day they last take it off at retirement, is to apprehend the lawbreaker. And you certainly have lawbreakers driving stolen motorcycles. You're going to confront motorcycles on the street every day. It doesn't matter whether it's an American-made or an import. They're all going to have the same points of identification available to you. They're going to have a VIN. They're going to have a registration plate. They're going to have a conformance label that contains a VIN, and they're going to have an engine number. Remember, the important thing is that you actually have to get out there and look at those numbers, run those numbers, and check it for stolen. Motorcycles are a high theft item. Motorcycles can easily be stolen by driving them away, loading them on a trailer, loading them in a truck. In a matter of minutes, they're down the road. You're not going to get them recovered. You're not going to find them unless you take the opportunities that are presented to you and run those numbers.